Imagine standing in front of your people after being publicly beaten. Your body can barely stand. You know the punishment is not over. You think this ends with you. It doesn't. Roman soldiers are already moving past you. They are not there to restore order. They are not there to make arrests. They are reaching for your daughters while you are still standing in the open. You were a queen. You were an ally. You followed Roman law. None of it matters now. There is no trial. There is no charge. This is happening in public where everyone can see it. The crowd has gone silent, not because they are confused, but because they know exactly what is about to happen. This is where Rome expected you to give up. This is where a mother was supposed to break. This isn't made up. This happened. Roman historians wrote it down using very few words because even by Roman standards, what followed was hard to write down. By the end of that day, Rome believed Britain had been broken. Instead, it triggered a rebellion that burned Roman cities and nearly forced the empire to leave the island. But that rebellion comes later. Before Britain burned, Rome had already perfected how to deal with defeated queens. And this is where that lesson begins. If hidden horrors of the past fascinate you, subscribe. Hit the like button. And once you reach the moment that unsettles you most, tell me where you're watching from. Let's begin. You're being marched forward through the streets of Rome. Roman guards stand on both sides of you, controlling how fast you walk, forcing you to keep moving as your body struggles against the weight dragging at your arms. You're not allowed to hurry. You're not allowed to stop. The chain locked around your wrists is cold against your skin and clearly made of gold. It catches the light as you move, pulling the crowd's attention with every step. It is not designed to stop you from running. It is designed to make sure no one looks away. The weight pulls at your shoulders before the pain reaches your legs, and you understand the purpose immediately. You're not being held back. You're being displayed. You hear the crowd before you see them. Thousands of voices layered together. Laughter, shouting, excitement. This is not the sound of execution. They are excited, and that is when the fear sets in. Rome kills its enemies quickly when it wants them gone. When Rome keeps you alive, it is because your body still has a use. You lower your eyes, not in surrender, but because whatever waits at the end of the road has already been decided. You just don't know what it is yet. Waiting is part of the punishment. Then the perspective widens. This isn't just you. This happened to Queen Zenobia of Palmyra in 272 CE. The Roman legions finally caught her. For years, Zenobia had done what no Eastern ruler dared. She challenged Rome openly. She carved out an empire stretching from Egypt through Syria and into Anatolia. She ruled in her own name, made her own coins, commanded armies, and forced Rome to treat her as more than a throwaway client ruler. When Emperor Aurelian marched east, it was not to negotiate. It was to erase her. Zenobia knew how the Roman wars ended. She had seen the triumphs. She knew what happened to defeated kings. When her final army collapsed near Antioch and her last escape toward Persia failed, she did not expect mercy. She expected execution. Instead, Roman soldiers surrounded her and did not raise their swords. That alone was terrifying. Rome spared enemies only when it had something to gain. And Zenobia was valuable, not as a woman, not as a queen, as a symbol. Aurelian had crushed a defiant empire. Now he needed Rome to see it. Zenobia was placed in custody, but not comforted. Days passed, then weeks. She was moved between guards and holding rooms, watched, isolated. No sentence was announced. No charge was read under Roman law. The moment her army fell, Zenobia ceased to exist as a legal person. Defeat did not mean punishment. It meant transformation. The ius gentium, Rome's so-called law of nations, held that anyone captured in war became property. Free people became possessions the moment defeat was declared. Titles disappeared. Crowns meant nothing. A queen now had no more legal standing than the lowest soldier taken alive on a battlefield. And Rome did not explain what would happen next. During captivity, Zenobia would have heard rumors. Some captives vanished before triumphs ever took place. Others were kept alive only long enough to be displayed, then quietly removed. When word finally came, it did not announce execution. It announced preparation. The Senate had granted Aurelian a triumph. This was the moment Zenobia understood what Rome intended to do with her. A Roman triumph was not simply a parade. It was a public ritual of domination. It turned conquest into spectacle. And at its center were always the defeated, prisoners of war, captured generals, fallen kings, and queens. Zenobia would not be killed in a cell away from witnesses. She would be preserved, dressed, adorned, displayed. Her body would tell a story Rome wanted to remember. In the days before the triumph, the city prepared. Banners were raised, statues cleaned, streets cleared from the Field of Mars through the Forum and up toward the Capitoline Hill. Nearly 4 kilometers of exposure for kilometers of faces. Chains were made specifically for Zenobia. Not iron, gold, heavy, decorative, impossible to ignore. They were not meant to stop escape. Rome knew she would not run. They were meant to turn the wealth she once commanded into the instrument of her humiliation. As the day approached, the city buzzed. Crowds wondered, would Aurelian execute her at the end? Would she be dragged away mid-route? Would she vanish beneath the Capitoline, swallowed by the prison carved into the rock below? No one knew. Some captives completed the walk and lived. Others were quietly diverted before the final ascent. That possibility weighed heavier than the chains themselves. Zenobia, according to later accounts, held herself with composure. She did not beg. She did not collapse. She did not scream. That calmness unsettled the Romans because Rome expected defeated queens to break. Zenobia's survival was not guaranteed. It was being evaluated. Her life hung not on justice, but on usefulness. And she was not the first woman to learn this. Across the empire, Rome had already perfected what happened when queens trusted law, status, or loyalty to protect them. The fate waiting for them was not written in codes. It was written in bodies. And in what's coming next, humiliation would not produce silence. It would produce fire. Zenobia does not yet walk Rome's streets. Before the city sees her, Rome prepares her. And the preparation begins not with chains, but with law. Roman power did not rely on chaos. It relied on rules. Rules designed to protect Romans and rules designed to abandon everyone else. Once Zenobia was captured, she crossed an invisible line. On one side stood citizens shielded by centuries of legal privilege. On the other stood enemies of Rome. She belonged entirely to the second category. Under Roman law, defeat erased identity. The moment her army fell, Zenobia ceased to exist as a legal individual. She was no longer a ruler, no longer an ally, no longer even a person protected by law. This distinction mattered. A Roman citizen could not be flogged without trial. To bind a citizen without due process was scandalous. To execute one without appeal could trigger unrest. Roman bodies were protected because Roman power depended on citizens believing the state guarded them. Zenobia's body did not qualify. She was not Roman. She was not a citizen. She was not, legally speaking, a queen anymore. Roman officials understood exactly what that allowed them to do. While Zenobia waited confined and watched, Rome decided how to use her. Not whether she would live or die. That would come later, but how she would be transformed into a lesson. Captured rulers were often held in deliberate limbo before triumphs. Not tortured, not comforted, simply denied information. They were moved between holding spaces. Guards changed. Sleep was disrupted. Food was rationed. Nothing severe enough to cause outrage, just enough to drain certainty. Would there be execution, ransom, public display, a quiet disappearance? No one told her. And while Zenobia waited, Rome prepared the city. Rumors spread deliberately. People whispered about her defiance, her ambition, her arrogance. Rome wanted the crowd ready long before she appeared. By the time she stepped into view, the audience would already know how to feel. The triumph, once announced, became unavoidable. A Roman triumph was not automatic. It required Senate approval, a signal that the state had decided the enemy's humiliation was useful. The procession followed a fixed route, but nothing about it was neutral. Every detail was arranged to shape how victory would be remembered. Musicians led the way, their noise filling the streets. Painted scenes of burning cities and fleeing enemies followed. Exotic animals were dragged through the crowd, proof that distant worlds had been conquered and reduced. Only after this display came the prisoners. They were the proof. Captured soldiers walked in chains, their defiance already stripped away. At the front of the column walked the rulers, kings, princes, and queens. Their clothing was often left intact. Rome did not want to erase who they had been. It wanted to show what conquest did to power. Zenobia would not be stripped of identity. She would be forced to carry it. For kilometers is a long distance when you're exhausted, bound, and exposed. The procession moved slowly, stopping often so the crowd could watch. Spectators leaned from balconies. Children were lifted on his shoulders. Vendors sold food, while people laughed and pointed. This was not hatred. It was enjoyable. For Romans, triumphs were entertainment, proof that their empire expanded, proof that threats could be crushed. For captives, every step was exposure. There was no way to hide fear, no way to avoid eye contact. Every stumble was noticed. Every pause was judged, and at any moment, the route could change. Not every captive completed the triumph. Some rulers were diverted before the final ascent to the Capitoline Hill. While the procession continued toward Jupiter's temple, guards led the condemned away through secured doors, down side streets, toward the slope beneath the hill, toward the prison, the Mamertine. Above, music continued. Cheers rose. Sacrifices were offered. The homme célébrait. Below, execution waited. Every captive knew this possibility existed. Zenobia walked knowing it too. She also knew something else. Rome had done worse to women who trusted restraint. In the provinces, defeated women were often treated as spoils of war. This was not a rare thing. It was expected. Military culture, hardened by conquest, viewed defeated families as tools of domination. Delay did not mean protection. It meant postponement. Zenobia's royal status shielded her temporarily, but only because Rome still needed her intact. Others were not so fortunate. Across the empire, noble women lost protection the moment their male guardians fell. Their bodies became leveraged. Violating a ruler's family sent a message that traveled faster than legions. Nothing you value is safe. Zenobia's survival depended entirely on how useful her humiliation proved. If she broke, if she pleaded or collapsed, execution would follow. Broken rulers no longer served as warnings. If she endured, if she remained composed, she might live, not as herself, but as a reminder. Aurelian understood this calculation. He was not known for mercy. He was known for order. Zenobia's fate would reflect Roman priorities, not Roman compassion. As the triumph day approached, the city waited. So did Zenobia. She had already lost her empire. Her armies were gone, her authority erased. Now Rome would decide whether her body would vanish beneath the Capitoline or walk the streets as proof that resistance ended here. And while Zenobia waited, another queen far from Rome was about to learn the same lesson. She trusted Roman law, and Rome would teach her why that was a mistake. Zenobia stepped into Rome. The noise hits first, not a roar, something worse. A rolling sound made of laughter, shouting, and curiosity sharpened into hunger. This is not a crowd waiting for justice. It is a crowd waiting to see something. She is adorned. Jewels flash at her throat and wrists. Fabric dyed in colors only royalty could once afford clings to her body, wrapped around her, cutting into skin already weakened by captivity. Are the chains gold? Not symbolic, not light. Massive links that pull her shoulders forward, forcing a posture just short of collapse. Guards walk beside her, not to hold her back, but to help bear the weight. Rome has turned her wealth into her burden. The crowd understands immediately. They point. They murmur. They laugh. This is what happens to queens. Zenobia does not scream. That unsettles them. She walks slowly, deliberately, refusing to rush. Every step is measured. Every breath is controlled. She does not lower her head. She does not look for mercy. She looks straight ahead. This composure is dangerous. Humiliation is meant to break people. When it doesn't, Rome adapts. Musicians play. Incense burns. The city displays itself as the center of the world. Zenobia's body becomes the boundary between Roman power and remembered defiance. Aurelian watches, not with pity, with calculation. Killing Zenobia would be simple, effective, and final, but it would end the story too quickly. Rome does not always want endings. Sometimes it wants reminders. A living queen, reduced but breathing, speaks longer than a corpse. Zenobia survives the day. That decision, often called mercy, is not kindness. It is a strategy. She is granted a villa near Rome. She lives under watch. She is absorbed into Roman society. Her daughters married into noble families. On paper, she survives. In reality, she has been neutralized. Every appearance reinforces Rome's victory. Every sight of her reminds observers that even the most powerful woman in the East ended dependent on Roman tolerance. Zenobia becomes a warning that walks. But not every queen breaks quietly. Far from Rome, in the cold province of Britannia, another woman watches Roman law fail her in real time. Her name is Boudica. She is not Rome's enemy. Not yet. She is the wife of Prasutagus, king of the Iceni, a client ruler permitted to govern so long as he obeys. He pays tribute. He keeps peace. He believes Roman promises mean something. When Prasutagus dies around 60 CE, he tries to protect his family the only way Roman law allows. He leaves a will. Half his kingdom to Emperor Nero, half to his daughters. A compromise, a mistake. Roman officials ignore it. The lands are seized. Property confiscated. Noble families dispossessed. Rome does not negotiate. It takes. Boudica protests. She does not raise an army. She does not declare rebellion. She appeals publicly to the agreement Rome itself approved. This is when Rome clarifies what law means for women without citizenship. Boudica is seized. Not privately, publicly. She is flogged. The punishment alone is a violation. Roman citizens were protected from corporal punishment. Even allied elites were usually spared such degradation. To beat a queen was not enforcement. It was instruction, and Rome was not finished. Her daughters, young, unmarried, unprotected, are taken. Tacitus does not describe what follows in detail. Ancient historians rarely do. He uses few words, but the meaning is unmistakable. They are violated by Roman soldiers. This is not random violence. It is calculated humiliation. Rome understands that conquering a ruler's body is powerful. Conquering her children is devastating, and it is done in view of her people. The Iceni are meant to see this, to understand that resistance does not end only in death but in the destruction of lineage. Rome believes this will end the problem. It is wrong. Something in Boudica fractures and hardens. The flogging does not silence her. The violation of her daughters does not break her. It transforms her. When she speaks again, it is not to Roman officials. It is to her people. Tacitus preserves a version of her words. He records her not as a ruler pleading for sovereignty, but as a woman demanding vengeance. She speaks of her body, of her daughters, of what Rome did. This matters. Rome can crush kings. It struggles against rage that no longer fears loss. Boudica raises an army, not trained, not disciplined, furious. Rome is caught off guard. Camulodunum burns first, then Londinium, then Verulamium. Cities are razed. Tens of thousands killed. Roman authority collapses across the province. For a moment, the empire hesitates. This is the cost of humiliation miscalculated. Eventually, Rome responds the way it always does. Discipline, formation, style. Boudica's forces are defeated in a battle whose location history does not preserve. She disappears. Some accounts say she poisons herself rather than face capture. Others fall silent. Her daughters vanish completely. Their names are not recorded. Their lives are not followed. Their fate after Rome used them to deliver its message is not preserved. Silence closes over them. Rome restores order. Britain remains Roman. The rebellion becomes a lesson. Not about cruelty, but about control. In Rome, triumphs continue. Some queens live as reminders. Others vanish beneath the city. Some stories are told, others are erased. The pattern is clear. When humiliation works, Rome preserves you. When it fails, Rome destroys everything you touch. And beneath the marble, beneath the music and celebration, one last place waits for those who are no longer useful. A place where triumphs end. While crowds watch generals ascend the Capitoline Hill to thank Jupiter for conquest, something else happened nearby. Cut directly into the rock beneath the hill stood the Mamertine prison, the Tullianum. It did not announce itself. No banners, no inscriptions, no celebration, just stone. Inside it was worse. The prison consisted of 2 chambers. The upper level held prisoners briefly. The lower chamber, the end, was reached only through a hole in the floor. Prisoners were lowered down or thrown. Once inside, there was no light, no ventilation, no escape. This was not a place meant for holding people. It was a place meant for ending them. Execution did not always come quickly. Some prisoners were strangled, others suffocated, some were left to starve, their voices fading while celebrations echoed above. This separation was deliberate. Rome did not want blood in its triumphs. It wanted victory undisturbed by visible death. Killing happened out of sight while the celebration continued uninterrupted. Vercingetorix learned this slowly. The Gallic chieftain who unified tribes against Julius Caesar was not executed after his defeat at Alesia in 52 BC. He was imprisoned for 6 years. 6 years of waiting. 6 years of knowing his life had been paused, not spared. When Caesar celebrated his triumph in 46 BCE, Vercingetorix was paraded through Rome, no longer a warrior, but a reminder. After the procession ended, he was led away. The crowd never saw him again. Jugurtha of Numidia met a similar end. After Marius's triumph, he was lowered into the Tullianum. Ancient accounts say he went mad with fear. He lasted 6 days, starving in darkness, unheard by the city above. Simon Bar Jora, leader of the Jewish revolt, was paraded through Titus's triumph in 71 CE. The procession paused at the temple of Jupiter. Only when word arrived that Simon had been executed did the ceremony resume. Death was not an interruption. It was a checkpoint. Not every ruler was killed. Some were too useful alive. Zenobia lived, but not as herself. She did not return east. She did not reclaim power. She did not choose her ending. She existed under Roman watch, absorbed into the society that had destroyed her authority. Her survival reassured Rome's enemies that resistance ended in dependency, not redemption. Living queens became monuments. Dead ones became warnings. Both served the same purpose. This was how the empire functioned. Roman conquest did not rely on legions alone. It relied on memory, on images carried forward long after battles ended. Queens in chains, daughters violated, kings vanishing beneath stone. Fear traveled faster than armies ever could. The legal protections Rome celebrated applied only within its borders. Outside them, dignity was conditional. Humanity was negotiable. Defeat erased everything. What remains today are fragments. Tacitus's restrained horror. Plutarch's uneasy anecdotes. Josephus's careful records. And the stone walls of the Mamertine prison, still standing, still silent. Tourists walk past them now. Some descend the steps. Few linger. The stones do not explain themselves. They do not need to. They have already done their work. Rome called this order. Rome called this civilization. Rome called this victory. The queens who survived called it something else. If they spoke at all, most did not. And that silence may be the empire's greatest success.